Taoiseach, I want to raise with you, I think, the behaviour of Minister Ross in relation to a number of key issues. And I believe his remarks in relation to the judiciary have been unacceptable. And in my view, he is utilising his position as a minister to, in a politically populist way, undermine and attack the judicial pillar. And in short, he does not have respect for the judicial pillar, which is so central to our democracy. And he has made very inaccurate comments about them and their attitude to reform of the judicial sector. As Chief Justice had to come out publicly and make the point that the judiciary had been seeking reform of the appointment of judges based on merit for quite some time, had made a submission in 2014, had been part of a European declaration in 2012. And I think Minister Ross has been very cavalier, he's been untruthful and he's been disingenuous in relation to the judges. It may play well, but I don't think it's right that a minister should use his ministerial platform to engage in such behaviour. And add to that, you have the situation regarding the failure to fill, I think, up to 34 vacancies in state boards under the minister's remit. The Road Safety Authority, Irish Rail, Dublin Bus, the Dublin Airport Authority, Transport Infrastructure Ireland, Fáilte Ireland, Sport Ireland are all operating with depleted numbers, simply because the minister is refusing to appoint people. He has made various commentaries to the effect that how can he be expected to make decisions if there are so many names coming at him. Some sort of ridiculous commentary of that kind. And I would put it to Taoiseach that there is a system in place. The last government reformed it. It's called the Public Appointments Service. They select people to go forward for nomination by a respective minister. And, you know, there's 2 vacancies in the Road Safety Authority. That's a very important authority. Over the last decade, we've made great progress on that. Irrespective of who appointed who to boards, that authority made progress. Needs more resources and so on, and can make even further progress on that issue. Ministers on their own can't adopt solo runs, Taoiseach. He has a responsibility under the collective cabinet system to operate the rules as they currently apply, either in terms of the appointment of judges or in terms of the appointment of people of state boards. No minister can set himself up as a mini dictator who says, no judges will be appointed unless I get my way. And no one will be appointed to state boards under my remit unless I get my way, in terms of reforming something again, to which no one else has sought any additional reforms at this particular point in time. So, Taoiseach, have you actually called in Minister Ross and informed him of his ministerial responsibilities? I'm serious about this, Taoiseach. He needs to be spoken to, because under the collective cabinet responsibility, he has to operate the legal frameworks as they apply, in terms of the appointment of judges and in terms of the appointment of vacant state board positions, until they change, if they change. And I think I'm asking you, have you spoken to him about these 2 issues, Taoiseach? And will you speak to him about them? And do you think he's right in his approach so far in relation to the judges and in relation to his failure to fill the vacancies in state boards? Do you think he's right in that, Taoiseach?
I answered this question last week. Clearly, the Constitution is very clear about the appointment of judges and the appointment of members of the judiciary. I made the point that Minister Ross's comments in respect of judges and the oath that they carry were personal comments and do not reflect the view of government. I spoke to him about that. The 2016 programme for government, as you know, contains a significant reform in the judicial appointments process in order to make it transparent and fair and credible. And the Department of Justice and Equality have been doing extensive work on a judicial appointments bill, including seeking all of the necessary legal advices. There are serious changes involved here, Deputy, underpinning the Judicial Appointments Advisory Board, including a lay chair, a lay majority and the limitation of the number of candidates proposed to government. The bill does involve complex legal and constitutional questions on which detailed advices are necessary in order to proceed to finalise a general scheme of a new Judicial Appointments Commission bill. And as the House is aware, the drafting, the publication and the enactment of the actual bill cannot be completed overnight, especially in the current political context. The Taoiseach's intention, Deputy Martin, is to submit legislative proposals to Government in the next couple of weeks. A private member's bill was passed here at second stage on the 26th of October. That was not opposed on the basis that the Taoiseach will bring forward a Government bill on the matter very shortly. And attention has been drawn to the accumulating backlog situation in the new Court of Appeal and to the stated requirement for additional judges to be available to that court to deal with this account Corlam. There is a preference in Government that there should be no further appointments until the new legislation is in place. That's a preference of Government. There are existing vacancies in the courts and obviously in the time ahead there will be undoubtedly more. The requirements of the administration of justice will of course be taken into account by Government on a continuous basis. There's no doubting the necessity to legislate as quickly as possible for a judicial council, and the Government is prioritising that legislation for publication this session. Government is firmly of the view that it is necessary to put in place a structure to deal with the allegations of judicial misconduct which fall below the level of what might warrant invoking Article 35(4) of the Constitution. The Government is also firmly of the view that it is necessary to provide a platform for the promotion of excellence and high standards of conduct by judges. So, as well as providing for the establishment of a judicial council and board that will promote that excellence and high standards of conduct by judges, the proposed bill aims to provide a means of investigating allegations of judicial misconduct by way of a judicial conduct committee, and that model provides for lay membership of the Judicial Conduct Committee, and the important element of lay participation is a key element of that bill. Obviously, in regard to the Register of Interests, which has been referred to, the proposed Judicial Council Bill will provide for the establishment of a Judicial Conduct Committee, which will consider all of those matters. So, a bill is expected very shortly, and the Minister will bring it before the House here.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Martin.
You didn't mention in your reply the vacancies to state boards. No, you should have. I asked you a very basic question, Taoiseach, in terms of vacancies to state boards. Have you spoken to the Minister about it, and you just simply flatly ignored it and refused to reply to it? In relation to the judicial appointments, you have announced a departure today, because in the past you said there was no such edict in terms of appointing judges or failing to appoint judges. It seems you met Shane Ross in relation to judges, and you blinked in terms of that issue, because you're now using new language to the effect that the Government has a preference now that it wouldn't appoint any other new judges until the new legislation comes in a couple of months' time. But I want to put it to you, Taoiseach, that the combined behaviour of Minister Ross, both in respect of what he has said about the judiciary, because we have in terms of the legislature, the separation of powers, he has in a very cavalier way gone out to undermine that, and you know it. You know it, Taoiseach. And he's doing it because he thinks it's popular. Nice message. But he's a government minister, and he shouldn't be doing it. Because the legislator owes some respect to the judicial pillar and vice versa. And you know that too.
Time is up.
I want to ask you finally, Taoiseach, in relation to the appointment to state boards, do you agree with Minister Ross's refusal to appoint people to the state boards, Road Safety Authority and all the various ones I mentioned? And have you spoken to him in relation to the need and his obligation, his collective cabinet responsibility, that he should appoint people in accordance with the framework that has been laid down by the Government?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
I answered questions here on this before. There is a vacancy in the Supreme Court, but the Chief Justice has not recommended or not requested that be filled. There is no vacancy in the Court of Appeal. There are, I think, 2 or 3 between Circuit Court and District Court. So that is true, and obviously the preference of Government is to proceed ahead with the judicial bill here. You mentioned state boards. What's happened now is that people apply online to the public appointments service. Ministers of the day do not know who applies. The purpose of PAS is to determine whether people are qualified and eligible to serve on particular boards. And the important thing to bear in mind, Deputy Martin, is that it is the Minister who sets down the criteria that he or she requires for service on those state boards, so that the Public Appointments Service can see whether the applicants, conform to those requirements. Well, before, in time long before your time, it was a matter of just filling lists as you got them, and it was normally done in the intermediate stage between the government going out and the government coming in. In any event, I understand that Minister Ross is looking now at the issue of the number of applications who have been deemed to be eligible and qualified for the different state boards that are under his remit, and the conditions for those and the criteria for those are set down by each individual minister, so that that's where the authority lies, to set out the criteria and the qualifications that are necessary.